Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Now, I won't beat around the bush. I hate French cars with a passion. Well, most French cars anyway. Je déteste le voiture français. They're mostly unreliable and underwhelming to drive and unrewarding to own. They're cheap but not cheerful. You name me any French car and I'll come up with a better alternative every single time. Occasionally, however, they make something very good, but it's hard to enjoy that through a sea of boring, bland breakdowns. I'll give you an example. Yesterday I was driving one of those Citroen C4 Picassos with that terrible semi-automatic gearbox. And I remember thinking, this is that bad? Well, for a split second I considered suicide. Which just proves that when the French try and make a sensible and sober car, it's terrible, and you'd be better off spending your money on literally anything else. They just don't work because there are always better options. French cars only work when they're weird and quirky and eccentric. That way you end up buying one with your heart and not your head, and you can actually enjoy it. This all brings me on to today's car, because today I'm in a Citroen C4 Cactus, which is a very strange car with an even stranger name. And I like it. It's odd, it's strange, it's eccentric. It's actually very good. Everything you look at, you think, why have they made it like that? And obviously there is no logical explanation. Let's start with the styling. I mean, the styling is daring and out there. The Cactus is definitely one on its own. They certainly haven't copied anyone else's homework. You have these strange textured doors. Citroen call them air bumps, but in reality they look more like those anti-slip rubber bath mats that your grandparents have so they don't slip in the shower. They don't serve any real purpose apart from protecting your door from being dinged in a supermarket car park. Then you've got the roof bars, which almost look like they're floating. They're so strange. I've just never seen anything like that before in a car. I don't know what on earth the designers were taking when they designed this car, but somehow put together, it just works. The car is better than a sum of all its parts. I mean, the interior is equally strange. Rather than just fitting a conventional glove box, you've got this weird thing which looks like a chest almost. It's got these mock strap things on it. In fact, no, it looks more like an expensive piece of luggage, like something Kim and Kanye would have. You get these leather straps here instead of door handles. Nothing makes sense, and I think it's brilliant. Yes, I mean, some of the plastics feel a little bit cheap, but on a car like this, it doesn't really matter, does it? It actually helps, because if you're going to use this as a family car, everything's quite easy to wipe down. It's brilliantly eccentric. It's brilliantly French. I like to think of the Cactus as being bohemian. It's like your art teacher at school, you know, the weird hippie one that would let you play your music in class and tell jokes and just generally have a laugh. It's like that. It doesn't take itself seriously. Being a Citroen, obviously the suspension is brilliant. It's so soft and comfortable. It makes a change to drive something which hasn't been designed with the Nürburgring in mind. The seats are really padded and soft too. It's just like being sat on a creme caramel. They also sit a little bit higher up than most cars, which obviously means it will be popular with people who don't have their own teeth. Inside space is good too. There's plenty of headroom, visibility is not too bad. The two front seats are very wide, which almost feels like you're in something with a bench seat, like an old Crown Vic. The infotainment screen here is very good. The display is crystal clear. And this one has sat-nav and a reverse camera. And the reverse camera is almost in HD. Far better than the Jaguars I've been driving recently. I like the design of the steering wheel too. It's nice and thin and open, and it just harks back to Citroens of old. Some of the controls for the infotainment system are needlessly complicated, but same with most cars nowadays. The more time you spend with this car, the more weird design features you see. For example, the centre vents here, one is bigger than the other, which doesn't make any sense. It almost makes you think, hang on a minute, did they do that on purpose, or was that a mistake? And then you've got the gauge cluster here, which looks like something that Atari would make in the 80s. It's all just quite quirky and quite fun. Rear headroom and legroom isn't bad either. I also like the design of the headlamps. They look like perfectly plucked eyebrows. It's not all good though, because there are lots of little design flaws, which in a normal car I would hate. But in this, it just adds to its character. Such as, the rear seat is just one solid bench. It doesn't fold in a 60-40 pattern, which means if you're doing trips to IKEA or something with a third passenger, well, it can't happen. Also, there's a lip on the boot, which means getting stuff in and out of the boot isn't the easiest thing in the world. The rear windows don't roll down, they just pop out like an iGo, which for the driver doesn't really matter, does it? But for your children in the back, they might hate it. There's also only one cup holder, which is about that deep, which is no good for your bottle, because every time you go around a corner it will slide out. So that's no good for your bottle of Orangina or Perrier. In terms of what it's like to drive, it's predictably and somewhat miserably French. And by that, I mean the gearbox is quite sloppy, the clutch is very high. There's only a choice of two engines, a 1.2 litre petrol or this 1.6 litre turbo diesel. Now this one only produces 100 horsepower, but it's alright, it keeps up with other modern traffic, so it's not dangerously slow or anything. Its 0 to 60 time is around 10 seconds, so it's alright, just won't win any prizes. It is very economical at this diesel. You'll average between 55 and 60 miles per gallon wherever you go, be it through a city centre or on a motorway. Also, because it only emits 95 grams of CO2 per kilometre, it means the road tax here in the UK is completely free, zero, which is always nice, isn't it? Your other engine option is a 1.2 litre petrol, which I've not driven that in a Cactus, but I've driven it in loads of other Peugeots and Citroens, and it's not a bad engine actually. The steering is quite light and numb, and the suspension, because it's so soft, it means when you go around corners a little bit quickly, there is quite a lot of body roll. But again, in this kind of car, who really cares? It's interesting, quirky, fun. That's all that really matters. So it might not be the most rewarding car in the world to drive, but it is rewarding to look at, to be in, to own. And you do get some nice features, such as if you're on a hill and you're doing a hill start, take your foot off the brake and it won't roll back. Things that years ago were reserved just for luxury cars. This model ran from 2014 until 2018, when it was replaced with a completely mundane version. So what's the point? If you're after one from 2018 onwards, I'd just recommend you go for a Focus or a Golf. But if you want a used bargain, then I can't think of a better option than one of these Cactuses, or cacti. Sound like Alan Partridge. Prices here in the UK start at around £4,000, but that's going to get you an early high mileage low spec model, so I'd recommend you spend at least £6,000 to get you something half decent. I'd also recommend you go for a high spec flare model like this, with sat-nav, reverse camera, aircon, that sort of thing. It might not have made much sense paying thousands extra for a flare model when it was new, but now they're used, that's only going to set you back a few £100s, and you get all those nice options. So definitely look out for a flare model. You also need to look for one with good service records. The diesels have a timing belt which needs to be changed, but they have quite a long interval, so that isn't something you need to worry about for another couple of years. Sometimes I've had Citroens and Peugeots with this 1.6 litre HDI engine, and they've been faultless and done up to like 150,000 miles without any issues. Then other times I've had them with 40 and 50,000 miles on, which have just been complete lemons. So French cars, they're a bit of a mixed bag. I just think in a world full of Corollas and Golfs, you really want to be a Cactus. You want to stand out from the crowd and have some sense of humour and personality. And that's what this car's about. Yes, it has its flaws, but that's what kind of makes it more human. You might be surprised by this, but I'm a big fan of this car, to the point where I would actually have one. If I was in the market for this kind of car, whether it's a Focus or a Golf, I would definitely have the Cactus. It's quirky and unique. So this is one French car that I would actually go out and buy and recommend. As for most other French cars, the list of things I would rather have includes a bus pass, a bicycle, bronchitis. So thank you once again for watching. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done already. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'll leave the link below. Yeah, if you've got any comments or questions, let me know and I'll do my best to get back to you. So yeah, cheers guys. I'll see you next time.